Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about something that holds a lot of us back. Sometimes cripples us. We can't move forward until we get over this one thing. That thing is fear. And it's normal. We all have fear, but maybe we should look at it from a different standpoint and maybe change our lives. She's helping to change lives. She's a noted psychotherapist, and this is the Love and Connection Spreader podcast. Rhena Miller is back with us. Welcome back. How are you doing?
I am very well. Thank you.
And I see you have your friends here. We're spreading the love between. Hilda is here. I'm trying to remember your name. It says G. Refresh me.
Yeah, it's just G.
Don't want to miss anything. And
no, you're good.
Is it Jonathan? I'm trying to remember.
Yes.
Awesome. We're going to start with Hilda on this whole fear thing. What are your thoughts about fear?
Well, Steve, I thought your introduction was a good one. I mean, fear's, I think, the big word and there's lots of different aspects to fear. But I want to start with the premise that we're wired to fear. We're really hardwired. Right. And it saved us. It allowed us to be where we are as a species. And the issue for me is, how do we deal with that fear and develop loving relationships? It seems to me that fear is the impediment.
I totally agree with you. And in fact, the evolutionary aspect of fear, I think they call it reptilian brain, where we're always looking. We're always on guard.
Exactly. So my question today is, what do we do to earlier discussion? We were talking about the tiger. What do we do about this tiger, that has many manifestations, not only because we carry it and we're so susceptible, but because we're born not into even the most loving environment is going to be filled with all sorts of fears that we will unconsciously absorb, whether we want to or not. It's there. Right? And one of the fear is for around people who look or act different from ourselves. And that all of those kinds of things we were born into. How do we navigate those impulses? And that's what I would like us to dig into today. How have we navigated that? What helps us? What gets in the way?
Who wants to dig in?
Yeah, great discussion.
Well, I have a thought right now. I mean, I think one of the first important things is to notice it and accept it and recognize it's part of how we're wired. Again, it's a survival instinct, and be kind with ourselves about it and understand perhaps that, I've learned research-wise, we're more comfortable with people who look like us, who have similar interests as us, etc. And then to realize, whoops, maybe somebody is so radically different that we might want to push them away, or we might want to be mad at them because they're acting in a way we don't understand. And yeah, if we vilify ourselves for that, that's not going to help us heal. And if we understand and maybe listen, maybe ask questions or talk to somebody we trust who might be a little more open, we might get some growth and some encouragement to look at things differently.
So, Rhena, my question is, and let's say to G and Jonathan as well, I mean, not only to you, but how have you done it? What have you personally done to deal with those impulses? Jonathan.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Well,
Jonathan's answer is really good.
okay. I understanding and accepting is the first step. It was actually when I met Rena, actually, I was going through a very difficult period of accepting and understanding. I was alone, and my greatest fear, at least at the time, my understanding of my greatest fear was being alone. I thought that I was an unlovable mess who was going nowhere in life, and I felt that isolation and that alone feeling of being in a leaving an emotionally abusive relationship was just, I had no direction, and I had was full of fear. I was full of negative feelings, and I didn't know really what to do with all of that. And it was accepting that feeling as valid, knowing that about myself first, and then trying to figure out where that was coming from and what that where the understand the key was understanding where I was going. It's really hard to be able to accept and understand that pit in your stomach, that deep dark feeling.
I'm so
And
glad you said that. I really
it
am, because
I'm feeling it now.
everybody avoids it. And there are
Hmm.
some people that fear themselves, like you said, and they're always staying busy because they don't want to realize that, oh my
Hmm.
God, I got to hang out with myself, but I'm going to feel alone. Oh, I don't want to feel alone. So I'm going to stay busy, stay busy. But it's
It's
okay.
yeah,
But I get that it's not. I totally get that
it's
it's not.
it's confronting it and staring it in the face and feeling it and realizing that it might not be what you think it is. Um, it I realized through understanding back in this dark time in my life that I was actually not afraid of being alone. I was afraid of being unlovable. And I realized that I actually didn't love myself. And I had a lot to work on to love myself. And over time, through talking with friends and working on myself and writing positive things about myself, like even as simple as what did I do today that I liked that I did, helped me learn to love myself and start to realize that there are lovable characteristics of myself. And once I started to love myself, I started to realize why other people would love me. And I started to realize that the friends and loved ones that I did have in my life loved me for those things. And so understanding my fear helped me teach me how to love myself, but also to love others and how I could connect with others. That is the key to everything, at least in that particular instance.
I
Uh,
and I want to honor the fact that it's hard work. You know,
So hard.
it's so hard. It's not easy stuff. Gee, you're nodding. How does that
I
resonate with
am, because it is hard. It's so hard. I think for a long time, like my response to fear was squash it. Like, don't, like, it's not good to be afraid. Um, you have to be so confident, just do it. Um, and there's like a quote that's often used. I'm forgetting who it's by, but bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's doing things scared, pretty much. Um, and yeah, that just like Jonathan was saying, it's the acceptance of the fear and be like, okay, this is scary, or I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety today, whether it's founded or unfounded, I'm experiencing fear. I'm experiencing anxiety. Does that I think for me the hardest thing was like, okay, well, I'm not going to ignore it anymore. I'm not going to try and just not be afraid. I have to honor it. I have to like recognize that it's here. And I still have to do the thing that I'm scared of. It's I think because there's a difference. There's like you could try to ignore it and it's going to grow. You could get lost in it and be like, wow, I'm really experiencing this fear. That means that I just can't do anything. I'm going to shut down. Or whatever your natural response to fear. Some people want to like fight, some people want to flee, whatever. um yeah, and so I think that like middle bit of like, okay, yes, it's scary, I'm acknowledging this fear, and I have to do the thing. Like Jonathan, you were saying, it wasn't just like recognizing, oh, I have this fear of being unlovable. It's like, okay, and now I have to do the thing. Now that I've gotten to the bottom of this fear, I have to do the thing. carrying and honoring that fear. And that's, Hilda was talking about the tiger. I think a lot of the fear that we experience in society, especially with like global media, we don't have a thing to do. It's like, I am taking in information, images of war zones, lots of horror movies and all this stuff. There is no outlet. And I think that has been something that I've been wrestling a lot with lately, is this building of fear that I don't feel like is connected directly to anything in my life. It's really abstract. And I think for me, what I do about that is like work it through the body, because I think fear is really visceral. So like maybe I just need to do some stretches. Maybe I need to go for a walk. But yeah, in general, I think like mindfulness, acceptance, and then like doing the thing that you need to do.
Well, I'm hearing the word compassion. I'm not hearing the word compassion, but what I'm hearing is the definition of compassion. So I want to take it to another step. That's okay. And that is, then what do we do with the people we're afraid of? That next step. Right now, people who look different, act different. And sometimes it's reasonable. Like when I walk at night, and when my spouse and I walk at night, we see a lot of people on the street, and I feel, it's awful. What I'm not going to, my experience is that some of these people are carrying a lot of mental illness, and I'm not equipped to handle it. I'm just not equipped to handle it. I'm not a big person, and etc. I don't know it, but there are people who I also fear, and those are people who are different than me. So my next question is, what do I do with people who look and act differently than me? It does what I do for myself carry over into those people. Gee, you were talking about when you were talking to people on the street, because that was your job. There were some people who are pretty nasty. Yeah. Well,
Unfortunate, but true. Yeah.
what do you do about that, or what do you want to do about that?
Why don't you tell them what the job was that
Yeah, just a little context. I was a canvasser. Basically like the people that stand in like popular neighborhoods and say, hey, we're raising money for this thing. You should get involved. The thing that I was raising money for was the International Rescue Committee, which is the largest secular nonprofit in the world that helps refugees. Some people feel really negatively about refugees, which is wild to me, but that's neither here nor there. And yeah, I think that has definitely built a lot of fear, because, here I am, like very literally representing a cause that people hate. And especially being like a queer woman of color, like people can be violent. Like I think I did have a lot of fear of that. And to answer your question, Hilda, like what do you do with those people? Like you do the thing scared. Like I've definitely had a conversation with someone that started out rather strongly in disagreement. But something about his attitude, he was still open to listening and hearing what I had to say. And I think by the end of the conversation, he was a lot more sympathetic to refugees and to the processes that create refugees and all of that. I think if I let the fear of other people who may want to be violent to me, who may be different or think differently, have different opinions from me, rule my life, I wouldn't go anywhere. I wouldn't be able to live my life in the way that I want to. And I think that's like a really I guess, specific example, because like not only is this fear that they are different, the fear is that they don't like me. Right? And I think that's like a very specific fear.
Fear of rejection. It's like one of the
Yeah,
top fears, you know?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think just having the self-compassion, and also, I guess, the confidence to interact with those people anyway, and to also, I guess, just know when maybe it's not worth it. Maybe you need to, those fears are there for a reason, right? And if you're feeling in a very unsafe situation, maybe it's time to get out of that situation. And I think that is the balance. But yeah.
I was wondering how you handled that in those moments, that fight or flight response, when fear is physical. How, I guess you get used to that more as you go on, or did it get easier? What do you have? How was that?
It does get easier. I'm naturally, I think, good at de-escalation and diffusing situations. So I definitely have used those skills. And I think sometimes, like, there's your own reaction, right? But you're also reading the other person's reaction. And oftentimes their reaction is based in fear. And if you can see and understand that, like, again, you recognize in yourself, you're like, I'm having fear. This is a pretty reasonable fear. I'm being greeted with very hostile energy right now. But I'm gonna honor that. I'm gonna do the thing I need to do anyway. I'm gonna talk to this person. Their reaction is coming from fear. And that changes things a lot, because then you're seeing this anger. It is anger, sure, but really it's just a cover up for fear. And I think a lot of things come out sideways if you don't deal with them directly. Fear is absolutely one of those things. Yeah, I think I got better at seeing that in
So it's
people.
remembering to be empathetic in those moments.
And it's hard to be empathetic when
Oh
someone's
yeah.
coming at you. That's and it's remembering to be empathetic, and also having boundaries that, protect yourself. Like, yes, okay, I see that you're coming from a really scared place right now. You can't talk to me like that.
I went a little bit of that your example reminded me of a time, voting day in 2020. My piano tuner was in my home with a ballot for the other president that I would never dream of voting for. He was on his way to drop his ballot off. And we ended up having a nice conversation. I mean, nice. We listened to each other. He asked me questions. Of course, I brought up how racist that president what is. And he asked me questions. He's like, but he was asking me questions about Black folks. And he was pretty much asking, why do I see them as criminals? Why he was just, and but why is there so much criminality with Black folks? And I just listened. I let him know that the media tries to show us lots of things. We have been raised biased in this country. I recommended a program for him to watch, 13th. We kept talking to each other and listening, and there really felt like there was something special. And I knew it wasn't a coincidence for me that I was having the opportunity to employ this man. He was paying him to be in my home to tune my piano. And and I checked in with him afterwards. Did you watch 13th? Yes, I did. How did it impact you? And he let me know. And then the nice thing is he came back to tune my piano again. And I just really felt like it, he's like, thanks for having me back again. And it meant a lot to me, because some people will be like, you voted for him? I don't want you in my home. But he was doing a good job on my piano, and his price was pretty good. And I liked the fact that we were listening to each other.
And you allowed that to happen. You saw something that allowed you to do that. And he did too.
You know, the one common denominator here is we just want to be loved. The piano tuner, maybe he's got stuff going on, and you might not necessarily agree with his political affiliation, whatever, but maybe he doesn't feel loved. And whatever it is, any way you can show it, have a conversation. And gee, I totally get your picking up on the fear thing. When I was 22, I still have a deviated septum because I was at a fast food restaurant and a bunch of guys came out and bam and whatever. But that since that day, my radar is always up. And unfortunately, and I'm loving him, but when you know, you feel it,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the fear response, like Hilda was talking about, like it comes from when we were fighting tigers and bears and what have you. And that's why we need to honor it and listen to it and accept it in order to like move forward, because it is there trying to protect us. And we have the discernment to say, okay, maybe this fear isn't the most useful right now, and I need to do the thing.
And process it. Because like you said, if you feel something, is it right? You know what? I don't really have to worry about this person. I turned my back, and that's where it went back back then. I want to say, if I may, Jonathan, you said something before in your journey of writing things down. And I don't think our population realizes the power of writing our thoughts down.
It's very powerful.
It is.
It puts your own words out of your head and onto paper. When you can see them, you can organize them, and you can even learn how you are feeling in that moment, because you might not even know. When it's up here, it's
all
just
scattered.
a voice. It's just noise.
Yeah.
In here is something you can revisit.
And what I appreciate about what everybody is saying right now is, as a therapist, I learned an exercise called taking your mind for a walk, and I literally will walk around my office babbling behind my client and saying all of the things that I have a sense that their mind is telling them. I mean, blah, 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 and, oh, I can't do this. And they end up laughing often. And I say, did that sound like your mind? And they say, yes. And I say, well, why were you laughing? And the answer is often because it sounded ridiculous coming out of your mouth. And there was some space between it. And so that is a bit of the mindfulness, is getting a chance to be like, these are just thoughts. I don't have to take them all seriously. And also, it helps people realize that they're not the only ones that are having some of these wacky thoughts that might be completely unfounded, and we have choices to listen to our thought, take them seriously or not, or just say, that is just a little bit of fear. I can be open-minded right now. I can do this thing I don't think I can do.
And taking that risk in our relationships with others, the same risk we take with ourselves. It's really hard. And taking that risk. I mean, and keeping the judgment, because we want to stay safe, but keeping, because there are relationships which can be toxic, can be difficult. And what do I do with that? And I was just thinking, the recognition that we all have of our similarities here. We're always looking for, are you like me? Maybe listening opens another door for finding out how we can relate to each other. So just taking that same model, and I'm taking that risk, and it's tough work sometimes.
We're all different, but we're the same.
And finding the similarities, I find, is a key.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and how can I look for that? Where can I find it? And sometimes people, yes, they're angry, they're threatening, and I'll take care of myself first. But to persist and say, how are you like me, in our head?
I had a neighbor say, not so long ago, none of us are all good or all bad. And some people might not be safe for us, or they might not click with us. But that doesn't mean we need to think of them as all bad either, and
Right.
And I've just seen some clients feel some relief in that statement, like, that's right. Okay. Some people are, but some of those people who are very different, they might just be there to kind of open up our mind in a way we didn't think of getting our mind opened, and being surprised maybe after a while.
But I'll bet you if you were able to have a deeper conversation with them, you'd realize, like we did here today, if we weren't feeling the same thing, this is random. We all got together. We didn't even know what we were talking about. There would have been dead air for 25 minutes. But there wasn't, because we are all dealing with the same stuff in different aspects. And fear could be, it's funny, fear could be anything. It kind of came back to the same thread. It's fear of not being loved. Like, gee, when you meet people on the street, canvassing, you don't want them to, genuinely love you, but just be nice to you in a loving way. And that's all we want. I'm going to share something real quick. Just happened in Virginia. A woman named Brittany was at a convenience store, and she paid for the person in front of her because they didn't have enough money. And she's just paying forward. That's all. And then that person left, and she went and bought a lottery ticket and won $150,000. Now, I'm not saying you do something to get something, but I call that instant karma. And just do the right thing. Somebody like G has something to say. Hear what they have to say. So what? Maybe might not agree, but you're a person, she's a person. Why not? And same thing with Jonathan. Like, thank you for being honest and transparent and talking about writing things down. I don't. So I appreciate you telling me that, because guess what I'm going to start doing? Writing things down, not typing, but writing. And Hilda too. Thank you for today and all of your thoughts and kind of springboarding it.
Thank you.
It's a great conversation. I really, really mean that.
Thank you, everybody. See you.
We're not going anywhere, Rhena. How do we connect with you? Your website, Rhena. If somebody has a question for you based on anything that we're talking about, how do we do that?
It's Rhena Miller, RHENA Miller.com. Yes.
Thank you for today. I really appreciate it. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're coming right back.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.